Michael Carter lived a life that many would envy. He had a stable job, a comfortable home in a peaceful suburban neighborhood, and a family that, from the outside, appeared perfect. His wife Laura was quiet and reserved, often keeping to herself. But she always made sure the house was in order. Their son Daniel, at 19, was seen as responsible and mature. He had chosen to stay at home while taking college courses online, which allowed him to be present and supportive. Emily, their 16-year-old daughter, was sweet and cheerful, though in recent months she had become distant. Michael often told his friends how proud he was of his children, believing they had a special bond. He noticed Daniel and Emily spent a lot of time together, but he thought nothing of it. It seemed natural. Siblings growing close was something most parents would admire, and Michael felt comforted knowing they looked out for each other, especially when he was away at work. As a father, Michael was dedicated but busy. His job required long hours, sometimes late into the evening, but he never hesitated to make time for family dinners on weekends. He believed that as long as he provided for his family, everything else would fall into place. Laura often reassured him that things at home were fine. She trusted Daniel, and Michael never questioned that trust. But slowly, subtle changes crept into their lives. Emily, who once loved going out with her friends, began to stay home more often. Her bright personality dimmed. She became quiet, withdrawn, and spent most of her time in her room. Michael asked Laura about it, but she brushed it off, saying Emily was simply growing up and dealing with normal teenage struggles. Michael wanted to believe that explanation. Still, he couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling that settled in his chest whenever he saw Emily looking anxious or when Daniel seemed unusually protective of her. He would often see Daniel checking Emily's phone or deciding who she could spend time with. Michael assumed it was just a brother looking out for his sister. The idea that something was wrong never fully formed in his mind. The signs were there, but they felt scattered, small, and easy to dismiss when life was busy. As time passed, Michael noticed Emily's school performance slipping. Teachers called to inform him that she was skipping classes and not turning in assignments. Michael asked Emily what was going on, but she avoided answering. She seemed afraid, but Michael didn't know what of. He turned to Daniel for help, hoping his son could encourage his sister to open up. Daniel promised to talk to her and made sure Michael believed he had everything under control. Michael was grateful for Daniel's support. He wanted to think his son was guiding his sister through a tough phase, but a storm was building inside their home, and Michael was still blind to it. The perfect family he thought he had was starting to crumble, and soon he would uncover a secret that would destroy everything he believed about the people he loved. Michael's concerns continued to grow as more unsettling details began to surface. Emily's behavior became harder to ignore. She often locked herself in her room, barely eating, rarely smiling, and avoiding eye contact. She jumped at sudden noises and flinched when someone called her name unexpectedly. Michael would sometimes find her staring blankly out the window for long periods, as if she was lost in her own world. His attempts to talk to her always ended with quiet nods or quick excuses to leave the room. Laura remained convinced that Emily was simply struggling with teenage emotions, but Michael's instincts screamed that something deeper was wrong. What disturbed him more was Daniel's increasing control over Emily's life. Daniel began dictating where Emily could go and who she could talk to. He often insisted on picking her up from school himself, even though she could take the bus. He closely monitored her phone and frequently deleted messages, explaining that he was protecting her from bad influences. Michael occasionally found Daniel hovering outside Emily's door late at night. When questioned, Daniel always provided some quick explanation, saying he was just checking on her or that she needed his help with something. These moments left Michael uneasy, but his trust in his son prevented him from digging further. One evening, Michael stumbled upon Emily's phone wedged between her bed and the wall, as if she had hastily hidden it. The phone was locked, but Michael noticed something strange. The call history had been wiped clean, and the message folders were empty, except for a few recent texts from Daniel. This seemed odd. Teenagers typically kept long threads of conversations, even if they were trivial. The absence of data on Emily's phone set off alarm bells in Michael's mind, but he wasn't sure what to make of it yet. Curious and troubled, Michael decided to check the home security system. He had installed cameras around the house years ago to keep his family safe. The footage usually showed harmless daily routines, but when Michael looked through the files from the past month, something unusual caught his attention. Several days had no video recordings at all. Entire chunks of data were missing, almost as if someone had deliberately erased them. Michael had never touched the system settings, and Lavra had no reason to alter the cameras. There was only one logical explanation, and it led his thoughts straight to Daniel. Digging deeper, Michael eventually found a single overlooked video file that had not been deleted. The recording showed Daniel entering Emily's room late at night and remaining there for hours. Michael's stomach tightened. His mind raced through innocent possibilities, but none of them made sense. Something was terribly off. The timing, the secrecy, Emily's withdrawn state, it all painted a disturbing picture that Michael couldn't ignore anymore. Fear gripped him as he realized he might be staring into the beginning of something far worse than he had ever imagined. The unease that had been quietly following him now crashed into full-blown suspicion, leaving him desperate for answers. Michael's hands trembled as he stared at the paused security footage. His mind spun, searching for any explanation that would make what he saw less horrifying, but none came. The way Daniel quietly slipped into Emily's room at night and stayed for hours was not something a caring brother would do. It was deliberate. It was secret. The weight of what he might be uncovering pressed down on him like a heavy stone. But he needed to be sure. He needed undeniable proof before he could accept the terrible suspicion growing inside him. Driven by panic and fear, Michael decided to take matters into his own hands. He purchased small, hidden cameras and carefully installed them inside the house, placing them in spots where they would not be easily discovered. He positioned one near Emily's door, another in the hallway, and a third facing the living room. He told no one, not Lavra, not Daniel. He went to work as usual during the day, but every night he stayed up late, reviewing the new recordings, hoping to find nothing. But what he saw over the next few days would forever change his life. Night after night, Daniel visited Emily's room once everyone else was asleep. Michael watched helplessly as the scenes played out on his screen. Emily never stopped him. She appeared exhausted and defeated, as if she had given up fighting. The videos revealed a dark, ongoing pattern, one that Daniel had carefully hidden under the protection of being her brother. Michael's heart shattered as the truth became unavoidable. His son had not been protecting his sister, he had been manipulating and hurting her, all while Michael believed their bond was something pure. The evidence was sickeningly clear. Michael wanted to storm into Daniel's room and drag him out of the house, but his mind forced him to pause. If he acted without a plan, the situation could spiral out of control, and Emily's safety could be at risk. Michael knew he needed to collect everything. He gathered the video files, backed them up in multiple places, and began documenting every suspicious incident he had witnessed in the past weeks. Every detail mattered now. As the weight of the truth pressed down on him, Michael felt a crushing sense of guilt. He had missed so many signs. He had trusted Daniel, leaned on him, and even thanked him for taking care of Emily. The thought that his own son had used that trust as a shield to commit something so horrific tore Michael apart. He also realized how Livye had dismissed every concern, how she had ignored Emily's emotional collapse, and how easily their family had allowed this secret to grow. Michael knew what he had to do next, even though the decision would destroy his family. He had to protect Emily at all costs. What had once been a home full of safety and love had now turned into a house of betrayal and silence. The storm he had sensed from the beginning was no longer building. It had arrived. Michael gathered all the evidence he had collected and walked into the police station with a heavy heart. The shame, the confusion, and the crushing guilt followed him like shadows, but his only focus now was Emily's safety. He handed over the recordings and explained what he had discovered. The officers listened carefully, their expressions growing more serious with each passing second. They assured Michael that the matter would be handled immediately and discreetly to protect Emily. The police moved quickly. They planned to arrest Daniel when the family would least expect it, to avoid any resistance or complications. Michael was told to act normally at home until they were ready. Every hour that passed felt unbearable. Michael struggled to sit at the same dinner table with Daniel, knowing what his son had done. Livye remained oblivious, speaking as if everything in their family was perfectly fine. She didn't notice Michael's pale face, his distant eyes, or his trembling hands. When the police arrived at their home one morning, Laura's world collapsed instantly. The officers walked in with calm but firm voices, placing Daniel in handcuffs as Livye screamed in disbelief. She cried out that there had been some mistake, demanding answers no one wanted to give her. Daniel didn't fight back. He didn't try to deny anything. He lowered his head and quietly allowed himself to be taken away. Emily was immediately removed from the home and taken into protective care. Michael watched her leave, her face empty of emotion. He knew she had suffered in silence for so long that even freedom now probably felt strange to her. The house, once filled with the sound of daily life, now felt hollow and cold. Livye couldn't accept what had happened. She accused Michael of destroying their family, of betraying his own son. She refused to look at him, refused to understand that protecting Emily had been the only choice. Their marriage crumbled quickly under the weight of blame and denial. Livye withdrew into herself, unable to process the truth. The story spread rapidly across the neighborhood. People who once admired the Carter family now stared at Michael with a mixture of pity and judgment. The perfect image they had shown to. The world was shattered. Michael walked through his home in silence, seeing reminders of the family they used to be. Framed photos on the walls, Emily's empty bedroom, Daniel's untouched belongings. Each corner of the house held memories that now felt poisoned. Michael learned from the police that Daniel had fully confessed during questioning. He admitted to everything without hesitation. He had manipulated Emily, isolated her, and convinced her to keep their horrifying secret hidden. He never expected anyone to uncover the truth. Daniel's calm confession stunned even the investigators. Michael sat alone in the living room that night, the weight of everything crashing down on him. He had thought he knew his family. He had thought he was keeping them safe. But sometimes, the deepest betrayal grows where you least expect it, right inside your own home. The trial moved swiftly, but every moment felt painfully slow to Michael. Daniel's crimes were undeniable. The evidence Michael had collected was solid, the confession clear, and Emily's emotional testimony sealed the case. The courtroom, once a place Michael had only seen on television, became the center of his broken life. He sat silently through each hearing, listening as the story of his family's collapse was laid bare in front of strangers. Lavra attended but sat far from him, her face frozen in disbelief. She refused to speak to Michael, still, convinced he had destroyed their son instead of saving their daughter. When the final sentence was handed down, Daniel barely reacted. He was sentenced to years in prison, far away from the family that had once trusted him. He didn't look at Michael. He didn't look at anyone. He simply walked away as if he had already accepted his fate long before the verdict. Emily was placed in the care of extended family members who lived out of state. Michael knew it was the right decision, but watching her leave again broke him all over. He hoped that distance would give her the space to heal, though he understood some wounds might never fully fade. The quiet suburban home became a shell. Michael found himself wandering through empty rooms, replaying every moment he could have acted sooner. He thought about the missed signs, the ignored warnings, and the blind trust he had placed in Daniel. His guilt was a constant, painful companion. Friends and neighbors slowly drifted away, unsure of what to say or how to treat him. The once warm invitations, friendly waves, and casual conversations disappeared. In their place was silence and distance. Lavra eventually packed her things and left. She couldn't live in the house that now held too many painful memories. She couldn't look at Michael without seeing betrayal. Michael didn't stop her. He knew he had already lost everything that once gave his life meaning. What remained were the heavy questions that would haunt him forever. How could he have been so blind? How could such darkness grow under his roof without him realizing? Emily began therapy in her new home, slowly rebuilding her life with people who genuinely cared for her. Michael received occasional updates from social workers, but never directly from Emily. He understood she needed time and space to find herself again. He only hoped that one day she might find it in her heart to speak to him, to let him know if she was okay. He remained patient, holding on to that small, fragile hope. The story of the Carter family became a quiet cautionary tale in their community. A reminder that sometimes the most terrible secrets are hidden in plain sight, guarded by the faces we trust the most. Michael lived with that truth every day, carrying the weight of a father's love that had come too late. His house, once filled with life, now stood silent, a monument to the horrifying secret that had torn his family apart. Here's chapter 6 of your story, expanded to 500 words, continuing the narrative without adding any headings. Michael's life settled into a slow, painful routine after everything fell apart. Days blended into nights, and time seemed to lose its shape inside the quiet, empty house. He went to work, came home, and sat in silence, staring at walls that once held family photos now removed, leaving faint outlines of where memories used to hang. The weight of guilt stayed with him, heavy and constant, like something pressing against his chest that he couldn't lift or escape. Neighbors avoided him. They crossed the street to avoid uncomfortable conversations or simply stayed inside when he walked by. His home became known as the place where something terrible had happened, a shadow in an otherwise peaceful street. No one rang the doorbell anymore. No one brought over food or asked how he was doing. The community that once surrounded him with warmth had vanished. Michael rarely heard from Lavra. She built a new life elsewhere, far from the pieces of the past they had both left behind. In her eyes, Michael had betrayed their son. She chose to remember Daniel as the child she had raised, not person he had become. The distance between them remained, a silent barrier that neither attempted to cross. Michael's only connection to his daughter came in the form of brief letters from her caseworker. Emily was safe. She was in therapy, and she was adjusting slowly, but she never responded to the letters Michael sent her. He wrote to her often, pouring out his feelings onto paper, but the silence from her side never broke. Michael never stopped writing. He believed that, perhaps one day, she might read his words and understand that he had tried to protect her in the end. Even if he had failed at the start, nights were the hardest. The quiet stretched endlessly, and sleep rarely came. Memories would flood back: Emily's nervous glances, Daniel's protective excuses, Laura's blind trust. Michael replayed each moment, wondering when exactly he had lost his family. He thought about the father he wanted to be and the one he actually was. Regret settled deep within him, unmovable and sharp. The house itself seemed to carry the weight of the past. Daniel's bedroom remained untouched, its door always closed. Emily's room, once full of life, now felt cold and distant. Michael sometimes sat on her bed, hoping to feel close to her, but the emptiness only deepened. The walls that had witnessed their happiest moments had also trapped their darkest secrets. Michael understood that he could never rebuild what had been broken. Some damage runs too deep to repair. But he continued to write to Emily, holding on to the only hope he had left, that somewhere, at some point in the future, she might remember him not as the father who failed to see, but as the one who finally chose to act. Until then, Michael carried the silence, the grief, and the unbearable weight of a horrifying secret that never truly left the house.